Hello and good day to you. My name is Janine Bolon. I'm with you coming from the Practical Mystic Show. And with me today, we have Laura Cross. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Laura is somebody I kind of stumbled into. Believe it or not, she has quite the little journey. Let me just tell you just quick a bit about her. She is an Air Force veteran, and of course, my father was Navy, and so that was a connection. She also is a owner of White Sands Premier Travel. So both of us totally enjoyed being able to do that. But we came to each other because of her popular TV show, which is Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross, and the fact that I have been in media, radio shows, and more the audio section of things, radio shows, podcasting, that sort of thing. And we happened to meet each other at a boot camp years ago. And what was funny, it was due to a huge miscommunication on matchmaker.fm, which is for podcasters and guests and radio show hosts. And it was this horrible, it could have been ended up being an absolutely atrocious situation because of the miscommunication back and forth between all the emails. And what was so funny was we knew each other. And so we were able to kind of go, okay, stop this. We're going to get on a phone call. And I'm like, Laura, hi, how you doing? We decided to have her on the show. So talk to us a little bit, if you don't mind, Laura, about your journey into mysticism. And the definition we use for mystics are people who are ordinary people who have extraordinary experiences and they see themselves as spiritual, but not religious. So that kind of gives you the definition so that you don't think you're buying into something you're not.
No, and it's a new world for me. It wasn't until doing the show and the more people that I meet that are like highly sensitive people or intuitives, and they started talking about things that I started to learn. All my life, I've always been told I'm too sensitive. I needed to have a thicker skin. You get too emotional, and so you're supposed to build this tougher skin and put up this harder shell. And I spent a lot of time, trying to do that, put up those walls. But then I started meeting all of these other people and they started talking about their experiences. And I'm like, okay, so first of all, it's okay to be me. It's okay to be sensitive and emotional. It's who I am. I've always been a very heartfelt person, and there's, nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of the background that I had came from. So really, this is a whole new journey for me. People started mentioning certain things and it would start triggering. And it's like, well, wait a minute, I've had that happen before. I just never thought twice about it.
Right. Right. So when did this start for you? When was it, when you started Mindful Mondays, or when did this like beginning happen for you, in your opinion?
Well, I guess it's kind of, there's bits and pieces that may have been there. I just couldn't explain it or didn't know why. So it wasn't until I started Mindful Mondays TV show that I started getting in touch with more of these people. And from there, I grew a new partnership. We started doing the Conscious Living Expo, which is even more people that are intuitive, highly sensitive. And they started talking about things that just started making me think. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Now I've had that happen. And I've had other people flat out tell me that they know or they can feel or sense that I have certain abilities. It just depends on what I choose to do with it. So it really has made me very curious and wanting to learn more, because it's a whole new world for me.
So when did you start Mindful Mondays? What year?
Last year.
Last year. So you
Yeah, July 24th last year. So this is all the last, less than a year. Less than a year.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I wanted to start talking to Laura about this is on the Practical Mystic Show, which has been running since 2016. We've interviewed hundreds of mystics, but many of them were very comfortable in their skin. They were very comfortable with their psychic abilities, their intuitive abilities. It just depended on their background and training as to what they called themselves. But with Laura, she was so fresh out of the box, so to speak. I was like, we need to have you on the show because I think it gives a misrepresentation of what the journey is like. Most of the practical mystics I've talked to, they were very comfortable because it'd been 10 years, 15 years where they had really integrated what was happening. And oh my gosh, I can do that too. And they didn't know it. So what were some of the things that were experiences that you have since learned there's a label for? Like, I think a lot of that is the language, like for a mystic is like, oh, wait a minute, what do you mean that's clairvoyance? What does that mean? Or what do you mean I'm kinesthetic? What does that mean? That sort of thing. So what are some labels that you've been able to self-identify that
And
are attributes.
you'll have to help with the labels because I'm
Oh,
still getting
I'm still getting used to that. That's okay.
I'm still getting used to those.
That's fine. This is
Um,
the beginner's guide to mysticism. Let's make it happen.
yeah, some of the things, people mentioned, like one of the recent things happened recently, and I know it happened when I was younger, was like a serious deja vu moment. It's like something happened, and I would swear up and down that I've already been here, already done this, but I couldn't explain it. And it's kind of like you knew where it was going to go, but it happened with a meeting I was supposed to have with somebody. I thought I was losing my mind. I kept looking at my emails and I'm like, no, we've never scheduled, we've never met. This is the first time we met, but the face, the background, the conversation, I'm like, I kept feeling like we already had this conversation. We already talked when we really didn't.
Right.
And so that was, one of my things. Um,
So I'm just going to pause you there. Let's just
mhm.
talk about that experience for a moment. This is very common, and there are very well trained, very highly respected psychologists that talk about how the brain can make delays in time and stuff like that. And they actually talk about deja vu. But what I've always found interesting about that is short term deja vu, like you move into a space and you feel like you've been there before or something like that. And they have very legitimate and I think chemical, organic reasons. I'm trained as an analytical biochemist. So as a scientist, if it, we call it Occam's razor, the simplest solution or the simplest reason is usually the right one. So rather than trying to find something extreme, we always go with what is simple. However, in this case, the reason why I like to put it in the metaphysical category is because it was a lot longer term and you were having to double check and you felt out of time, like not out of time, but like out of the loop of time. It was way beyond your simple deja vu that operates within a 5 to 10 minute window. This was days, right? Where you were like, and so that's where I like to let people know some deja vu is very well explained by neurochemistry and how the brain operates. And before we start getting all crazy about deja vu, but in this case, you were actually trying desperately to stay within normalcy and yet you had something that was metaphysical as far as you were concerned, right? So I just wanted to specify that before we move forward about Occam's
Yeah,
razor.
and I didn't know it'd be classified as that. I just felt like I'd lost my mind because,
Right.
I'm very careful about only scheduling so many meetings a day and not overloading myself because I've got stuff. But then whether it's the stars not being aligned or whatever, where all of a sudden doesn't matter what you do, it's like snafus keep showing up like all day long. And this was just one of those things. And it's like, okay, before I drive myself nuts, I need to just let it go. She didn't say nothing. The meeting went great. Just let it go and move on. So, and that's kind of what I did with that.
And by the way, you can tell that she's Air Force because that's a very military term, snafu. And for those of you who may not know what it is, it's situation normal, all effed up. And there's it, and it's right there with FUBAR, which is effed up beyond recognition. So I just had to say, this is where military people let themselves be known. I love it, by the way. Thank you. Okay, so that was one situation where you had that deja vu. What's another situation where you realized that something was definitely happening to you?
Um, well, there's a couple things, and this one, I don't know, kind of minor, kind of huge. When I had decided to pack us up and move from Colorado and move to Missouri, military wasn't moving me. I knew my fiance, we didn't like the way Colorado was headed. I could see it on his face. I had already lost everything once because I lost my husband almost 19 years ago, and I wasn't going to lose everything again. So I
Right.
really went into packing and moving for him. And really, the only thing I could tell him was in my heart of hearts, all I knew is we needed to go and it was all going to be okay. I didn't have a place to stay. I had lined up a realtor to go look at places. Our house went on the market January 1st. It was sold in a day, and I hadn't even found a place to live in Missouri. Now, most people do that the other way around. They go find a place, then they go pack up. As my realtor would say, I was highly motivated, and I packed for 2 months straight, and whoop, and everything fell into place. I'm not saying there wasn't whatever a little bit didn't come up came up didn't bother me. It's like as long as we still had our house, I was okay. We had plenty of time. We could stay in the thing. But it's he was actually the one that started getting the anxieties and stuff because he's like, I didn't think you'd ever leave here because my family is all in Colorado, and I'd had that house for over 16 years. But I just knew it was time to go. I couldn't explain it. And it's not that I wasn't trying to hurt my family or do anything else. I just knew we needed the change. Well, I was doing it for him. But when I got here, then I realized how much I needed to change. And it made a world of difference. And people were noticing because even my father made comments about, who are you? And I'm like, well, exactly. I felt like I got to be more myself when I was here because I changed my environment, but I
Yes.
couldn't really necessarily explain to people why.
And I think that's one of the challenges people who have strong intuition, whether they're male, female, or non-binary, it really doesn't matter. Um, when you have a really strong and highly developed sense of intuition, it's one of those situations where you stand there saying, I know that I know that I know. And that's circular and it's not even logical and it's ridiculous. And yet in your heart of hearts, you're like, I have to do this. It's almost a do or die kind of feeling. Like, if I do not do this, a piece of me will die. And I don't know what that piece is. I have no cognizant understanding of that. But by heavens, I am going to move and do whatever it is I need to do. And people do this against the advice of mentors, family, well meaning individuals. One of my favorite examples is the great chef, Emeril Lagasse, where he set up his restaurant in Nolans was against everyone that he knew, yet he had this incredibly strong intuition. He needed to put his restaurant where he did. And of course, then it became a mecca for all kinds of other restaurants that came around him. So it's one of those things that I like to use big examples like that. But it happens in day to day lives for other people as well. And folks are like, well, how do you know that you're right, Janine? I'm like, you don't know that you're right. Right? That's the thing. You don't know if you're right. You just know you must. Right. So that's one thing I love about your story. So
Well,
tell
and I
us,
really had to shut everything else out
right.
because, obviously my parents were hurt, but they supported us, so if the least little thing came up that there might be this doubt, well, don't do it, or this could be a big, I had to shut it all out. And I had to get my fiance to say, look, I need you to just back me up. And he didn't regret it either. Once we got here, we got settled and we love our home. And it's just been wonderful. Neither one of us have any regrets. It was just getting through it to get here. So,
Right. You're just walking the path. Do you have
yeah.
another example you'd like to share with us?
Um, I haven't gotten into I have a lot of times I have very vivid dreams. Sometimes they're disturbing. I've kind of been trying to dissect them. After my husband passed away, they used to be a lot of him, especially if I had spoke a lot about him, they would come up. I've had dreams to where me and him were sitting at a cafe like he used to love to do over in Europe and have coffee. But then when the waitress came, her hand went like right through him to bring the receipt, which just disturbed the snot out of me. I mean, that was a long time ago. Or I've had dreams where all of a sudden he's popped back up, but I know he's not supposed to be here because I have Dakota here.
Right.
And it just, yeah, I haven't even, and I don't even know what triggers them when they come up, but they're, I can remember them. I
Hmm.
can remember them just fine when I wake up. It's not like there's,
Hmm.
holes.
Yes, and it's through our dreams that a lot of our psychic gifts come online. And so when people start telling me that they start dreaming, it's not surprising to me at all that your gifts are starting to move into that direction. So one of the things I had chatted with Laura before, it was really sweet. She had me on her television show, and I'm like, "Hey, you got to come on my podcast." So I'm glad that you're here. And what I wanted to share with the audience is the fact that there are 4 books that are encouraged that you read if you are in Laura's position. You're just becoming new into this. You really don't know who to trust. You're going to trust yourself. Of course, please keep trusting yourself. Please keep trusting your own inner wisdom. But sometimes there's a lot happening and you would like a little guidance. And so there were 4 books that I recommended to Laura. And the first one is Ask and It's Given by Esther and Jerry Hicks. That is a fabulous book that will help you handle the emotions that are starting to boil up around you that you may not understand or have clarity on. The second one is helps you with the cognitive or the mental abilities, and that's Eckhart Tolle. who wrote A New Earth. That's the book I recommend now. The New Earth is a really good work that helps you understand where your ego is, how your brain tries to get in the way of what your heart wants, all of that conflict, all of that lack of clarity, all that inner dialogue that is not helpful. Eckhart Tolle kind of talks quite a bit about that. The third book that I think is very helpful when you have to deal with people that are in a community, whatever community, but most especially when you're having to deal with people in any kind of a spiritual community, please read the Four Agreements, because that will help you stay in alignment with who you are, who you wish to be, and how you want to move through the world. And it's one of the requirements that I have for all of the communities that I'm a part of. We happen to have once a month what's called the monthly master mystic group mastermind, and it's free. You can sign up, and Laura's going to be joining us as well. And what we do is we actually have these four books. I've only given you three right now, don't think I haven't noticed that, but these three books are kind of the primary that we ask people to start reading when they join us. But the Four Agreements is the one that we actually run the community with. That's how we all integrate with each other, and that's how we solve conflict, perceived conflict. um, Anytime somebody has an issue, we'll run it through the Four Agreements with the person before we take it to the community. It's amazing how it clarifies 99% of the issues. And so then there's the fourth book, which is incredibly self-serving on my part, and that is a book I wrote called Expressing the Divine, a guidebook for the enlightened soul. And that's basically the last 30 years of my spiritual journey. Every tool, every technique, every trick I've learned in the book, I have smacked into 100 pages, or 125, I think, 125 pages in a small book, so that it is, if you're looking for stories, if you're looking for biographical information, there's none of that. It is all, very practical tips, as people know that about me. So, Laura, tell me a little bit about some of the books that you have read, or some of the mentors that you've had in the past year, because I'm sure you've had a bunch of people come to you that have been helping you understand the gifts that you have.
I actually have not yet.
Okay.
I've just been learning and picking up pieces. I feel like a jigsaw puzzle that I'm trying to put the pieces together and figure it out. The book I have read is yours.
Oh, thank
That you
you.
so nicely sent me. I have chapter 10 left. That's it. So I'm at the end. But it's a wonderful book. It's easy to read and everything, and you put the terms in together.
Mhm.
Like I said, I'll probably have to read it a couple times to really absorb all the terms and what they mean and stuff. But yeah, it's been very intriguing, and it triggers things every now and then.
Mhm. And that's also the point. Most of what I cover in the book, you already know. I make the assumption you already know a lot of this. You just may not have labels for the experiences that you went through. Like we were talking about some of the psychic gifts that people have. And then there's a bunch of routines and how to run schedules and the four disciplines. I don't know what you may have thought of all that, but sit with your military background, you're probably like, yeah, whatever. You got discipline on lock.
Not necessarily. There's certain things, and there's certain things I've learned to ditch. Everybody used to always know if it was going to go somewhere 15 minutes early is on time, anything else is late. But when you got doing shows, not everybody goes by that. And I've learned life is too short, and I record the shows anyway, so I don't panic if they're like, not there.
On time.
But oh
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. And if my live starts a little late, well, okay, it's not on me. They showed up late.
Hmm. Exactly.
But yeah, the life's too short to get all cranked up about that. So I kind of ditched that.
Is there anything you would like to share that we haven't asked you about yet?
There's just, there's been a couple other things. I think your book mentions it too. And I know other groups have mentioned it. It's stuff about when you kind of hear like voices or hear conversation, or you hear stuff and other people are like, I didn't hear anything. And I have that every now and then. And it's
Mhm.
just really weird. Sometimes it's like when we're sleeping, I swear I hear something and I'll like sit up and I'll like, the more I try to pay attention, the more it just like goes away. Or there's times I've gotten up and tried to look for things. I'm like, okay, whatever. And I just go back to bed. But
Mhm.
so a lot of times it's at night, but I stopped asking because a lot of times people just, I just figure they don't have very, very good hearing. But
One of the fun things is especially if it comes in through your left ear. That's usually your clairaudience is coming online. That is how some people channel. That is how some people get good guidance when they're in the midst of a situation that they're looking or seeking for guidance. And so it's kind of entertaining when you start having clairaudience, because you sometimes don't know what's real and you don't know what's Memorex, because how's that for being dated?
Yeah.
um, but you don't know what's real in the sense that I was alone in my house one time, and all of a sudden it sounded like there was a cocktail party in the guest room across the hallway in my house. And I mean, the clinking of glasses, the low level conversation, to a point with such clarity, I would have sworn that the TV had been left on. The problem with this is I did not have a television. Okay. So there was no television in the house with which to have accidentally popped on, as they sometimes do.
Right.
Right. To have that kind of background. But it was like a 1970s cocktail party kind of environment. And finally, I got so fed up with it. I'm like, could you guys hold it down in there? Some of us are still in the body and want to get some sleep. And then immediately, bam, silence.
Wow.
So that's when I was like, they must be working on my clairaudience to make sure I'm listening appropriately at that higher frequency, which is what it is, higher frequencies. So yes, I can understand that challenge. And so you have the dreams, you have the clairaudience that's coming online, and the biggest thing is to keep on meditating. So do you happen to have a meditation routine that you use?
I will now. I've read all about this 3-minute meditation. I am one of those ones that have a hard time just sitting still and just, but I was listening to your stuff about the importance of why meditate, and you can do it in 3 minutes. So I will start setting up a routine, because I know I have time in the morning, and I'll do it before I go to bed and
Right.
see what happens.
Definitely. And I highly recommend that set a timer. Make sure that it's only 3 minutes. And some people have to start with only 1 minute if they're real twitchy. It depends on the personality, right? And then what I love is that what Esther Hicks recommends through Abraham is that you don't go any more than 15 minutes unless you're deep in your meditation. But otherwise, as they say, you're just fighting yourself. So start with just 3 minutes, and then next week, try 4 minutes. The week after that, maybe try 5 minutes. I mean, like, creep up on this stuff, make it go slow, and just get into the habit of sitting in a chair, calming your breath, focusing up on your,
This
in
is
your
what I
third
have
eye.
to calm.
Right. You don't. You
I'm
don't.
heady. I got to stop the garbage from running in my head
Okay.
about what I haven't done or what I do the next day. And yeah.
All right. So here's a joke. The mind cannot control the mind. And that's the first thing everybody says. So thank you for playing into that so perfectly. Oh my gosh, I love you.
I'm happy to
Because
help.
that is the very first thing people do, is like, oh, well, I've got to control the mind. Good luck with that. There's only one way you can control the mind: through your breath. So that's why every yoga or yogi that I've ever talked to, or yogini, that's the feminine verb. The only time they all say the same thing: focus on your breathing, focus on your breathing. It's like, if I hear one more person tell me to focus on my breathing, and it wasn't until 15 years later, I went, oh, that's why. Is because if you focus on your breathing, your brain can't interrupt and get in the way. So there you go. That's the trick. And so when you try to use the mind to control the mind, you are doomed to failure.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about breath work and different breath work. And it's funny because when I've talked to my fiance about, taking these deep breaths, because he has the whole white coat syndrome. And if he doesn't, looks like he's got high blood pressure just because he doesn't like going to the doctors. He goes, oh, yeah, I'm breathing. I'm like, no, breathe in deep all the way down. He goes, I said, you're breathing in the chest. Breathe. And I get back, I am breathing. Okay.
And so for fun, kicks, and grins, and of course, this is dealing with somebody else. And as you and I both know, you cannot tell someone else how to feel. You cannot
Nope.
tell someone else what they are thinking. And number 3, you cannot tell someone else what's good for them. Right? This is being a human being on planet Earth. So if your beloved chooses to participate in this way, he may. But when it comes to learning how to breathe deeply, a lot of us don't unless they were smokers. If somebody was a smoker, they totally know how to do that deep breath because, they're wanting that fix, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, but have him lay down on his back if you can, if it's appropriate for him to lay down on his back on the floor and do some belly breathing where he actually you focus on lifting your belly up. And if he's like, this is stupid, then you can go to the videos where they show babies breathing. And what you're trying to do with belly breathing is how do you breathe that is the easiest, least resistant form of breathing? And that's why you need to look at babies and look at how babies lay on their back. They got their arms up over their head. They've got their legs in the frog position and they're breathing with their belly. And if you move into that, it's amazing how a lot of the stress leaves your body. So that's just a quick little tip that might be able to serve you all well. Anything else you care to share with us today, Laura, before we go?
I'm excited to get started and to learn more. I mean, I it's I never put labels on things. I never even really kind of gave them much thought, but now they're getting more thought. Now I'm working on figuring things out.
And
So it'll be interesting.
I despise labels. I really don't like giving them. The only reason I do is because while we're in the three-dimensional universe, it's helpful sometimes in communication. But otherwise, my hope is that you decide what you want to be and then you label yourself. But I would never want to give you that label. So thank you for mentioning that. So thank you, Laura, for being
Yeah.
with us today and for being a part of the show.
Yep. And I love your YouTube channel. I was listening to your podcast today where it tells you how to take proper notes with a book. So I will be prepared for our monthly meetings.
So,
You
and
think
what
you think it sounds simple, but it's not, because a lot of us we just like you said, we just read through it, but it's not really working with the book unless you make your notes of what page and put all that stuff
And
together.
since Laura has put that up, I will make sure that I put that in the show notes because I'll have to go dig that link out. But thank you so much for that. And for those of you that are listening, it's free. Once a month we meet. It's called the Monthly Mystic Mastermind. I just have fun with all the alliteration. I'm an author. Shoot me, right? but but it's free for you to come on and join us and talk to us about your experiences. And if you need some help, that sort of thing, we'll have a link at the bottom of the show notes. And we'll see you again on next week with the Practical Mystic Show. Have a great day, everybody.